Okay, start whenever I start. Or you start right now. Okay, so to get the conversation started this morning then, have you guys heard of or talking about hacks in the news? What's the latest hack that happened that you're aware of?
X.
Very good. All right, what do you know about it?
Apparently, there was a cyber attack yesterday on X, and Elon Musk is saying that it's coming from a foreign country, but I don't know where.
Yeah, exactly. What do you got?
There's a DDoS attack.
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah, DDoS attack. So the brand new news, and that's what's great about hacking news, is that every day you're going to have another story, right? That'll show you something. Twitter was hacked, and it was a DDoS attack. So if you tried to log on to Twitter yesterday or X yesterday, you probably weren't able to from your phone. You might have been able to from the computer, but not necessarily from the phone. And the reason why was because the service was shut down, and it was hackers that did it. Elon is saying that, and the preliminary investigations are saying that it was Ukrainian, right? So what does that lead to? What kind of scenario are we possibly looking at there? If it's Ukrainian and it's against X. Hacktivists? Very good. Why?
Because it's for
Political beliefs.
agendas.
Very good. What's the political scenario?
They just had Zelensky on TV and they low-key made fun of him for like an hour straight on TV.
Very good. All right. So, because Mr. Musk is a part of the administration, the Trump administration, and because the Trump administration basically had a petty argument with Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, it created tension. And then the United States backed out of support for the Ukraine in their war efforts. So the result was, now you have independent hacking teams, which is what we believe this was, for the Ukraine attacking X, trying to do some damage to Elon Musk because it's a good target, right? And that creates a hacktivist situation. Very good. So that's what's in the news. So what I want to talk about then, or what I want us to walk through, is a backdoors in breach example of how that might have happened, even though we don't know all the details, right? So what could have possibly happened? I'm going to go ahead and flip all 4 cards, and we're just going to kind of talk about each of these, because this isn't a game of guessing. This is a game of most likely how it happened. You've got these organizations, these teams that are doing these hacks, okay? So remember, this is based off of the NIST attack cycle, right? This is how a hacker is going to work, pared down into 4 steps. So our initial compromise is quite possibly an exploitable external service. And of course, the definition of that is an external service that has a misconfiguration or a publicly available exploit. The attackers take advantage of this to attack and pivot to internal resources, okay? So somebody kind of put in lay terms what this is describing. It's exploitable, right? So whatever it is exploitable. So what does that mean about, let's say, the servers at X?
They're vulnerable.
Vulnerable, very good, okay? But it's an external service, so it's not necessarily an internal service. So we're talking about something that is outside of X, but impacts X, but is vulnerable, okay? And here's the tools that we can use for this. So somebody look up and tell me what Metasploit is.
Framework.
Is it a framework?
Is a pen test.
Pen test framework, absolutely. Metasploit, there's a lot of variations of it, is basically a command line tool in Linux that allows you to do some pretty nefarious stuff, okay? Pretty interesting tool. But it's basically a failed patching process is what's causing this. So probably what happened was there was a unpatched service that these Ukrainian hackers discovered, And then as a discovery of the unpatched service, they were able to get in. Very good. Okay, let's move on to the next card. Let's talk about credential stuffing. Somebody tell me something about credential stuffing. You can read it off the card, or you can use chat, or you can Google it. Somebody give me a synopsis of credential stuffing. Feel free to read it off the card if you want.
Cyber attacks when attacker collects stolen account or credentials.
Very good. And then what do they do with those stolen credentials?
They'll log in and try and say that
They stuff them, right? Sometimes the best explanation is just simply what is the word saying, right? Credential stuffing. Okay, put it in lay terms. What am I doing with credential stuffing?
Steal passwords.
Stealing passwords, right?
Yeah,
Usernames and passwords. The
Yeah, they're
easiest
dangerous.
method of escalation known to man. Alright? Now, what's our weakest link in the chain of exploitable, hackable situations?
User.
Very good, the user, okay? So probably what's gonna end up discovered in this, well, it'll never be released. That's the problem with hacking news, is Elon will never in a million years release what they discover when they find out how this hack really took place. It's gonna take the Ukrainians saying, this is what we did. He's never gonna admit to anything, right? But somebody probably had their credentials exposed somewhere in some breach, and then they possibly reused a password. So somebody was able to get a username, get a password. It was pretty easy for them to, at that point, stuff the credentials, get in there, escalate their way up the chain. Very good. Now, it talks about detection, and you've seen this detection method on a lot of cards. When you're playing backdoors and breaches, I would recommend always start, no matter what, if you don't know what to do next, start with SIM log analysis. Right? What is SIM?
Security Information Event Manager.
Security Incident Event Management. Very good. It's just an aggregate of logs that tell you what the heck's going on. All right, C2 and exfil. Somebody look up and give me a synopsis of this particular C2 method. Anyone got it?
It's a stealthy technique used by adversaries, red teams, and penetration testers to bypass network.
Very good. Okay. Now, to put that in lay terms, we'll flip it, and I'll put it in lay terms here. The way this domain fronting works is, what's a front? Think about it in terms of.
A pseudo, operation, not really the real operation.
Yeah, like, man, he's fronting, right?
Something that covers up the real deal.
Yeah, so back to our language discussion last time.
It's a cover.
What am I saying if I say he's fronting? I don't even know what I'm saying.
It's a cover up.
Okay, right. I know what a storefront is, which is kind of like the same thing. A storefront is just the front part of something, not revealing what's behind, but showing you what's in front. So if I'm gonna domain front, what's a domain? Give me an example of a domain.
Google.com.
Google.com. So if I'm gonna domain front, I'm gonna put out there a real Google.com. I'm gonna hide behind it and lead you, right, to another website or another page on that website where I basically allowed you to come through the front door, but then I directed you to the alley, and now I kind of have control of you there. So domain fronting has C2. C2 is command and control. That's just basically, I'm controlling you. And then finally, what is the persistence method? Now here's the thing about this particular attack. Do we know the persistence method yet?
No.
Not if it happened yesterday, okay? There's just not enough time for them to say, okay, we got everything cleaned up. Now Elon Musk is gonna tell you that everything's cleaned up and everything's fine, but do you believe him?
No.
I certainly don't, right? So cloud application impersonation. This is probably what's gonna happen with that one, just based off of X and what their business structure is. The attackers find a cloud application that is using a password key with access to managed identity. Your intra ID instance, the admin stored the key in the application's description field, which allows the attackers to maintain a foothold in your environment. What is intra ID? Somebody look that up. I've said this once or twice, but I don't think I've ever said it in a sense for you to remember it.
Cloud-based identity access management solution. It is a directory and identity management service that operates in the cloud and offers authentication authorization services to various Microsoft services.
Very good. Various who services?
Microsoft.
Microsoft. So we used to just blindly say Azure and Active Directory, and then now they've changed the name to Intra ID. Why, I don't know. I mean, Azure's just as fun to say as Intra. But basically, exactly what Seth just said. It's a method of saying, all right, can you get into this place? Are you valid? Are you able? Do you have the credentials that you need? So they're probably gonna impersonate somebody or something inside of the Active Directory environment that would allow them to just simply log back in, right? After they clean everything, sweep everything. A lot of times they won't go in and look at the Active Directory to say, who's logging in, who's in the Active Directory, right? Okay, so all that together, bearing all of that in mind, is what I want you to do. I want you to tell me, based off of what you know so far in this class, what are some methods that Twitter, X, should have in place, or probably should have had in place, to prevent some of these things from happening? What are some suggestions? If you were pressed to say, okay, give me some suggestions as to how to protect against this, what would you do?
Password change requirement.
Password change requirement, all right, tell me about that.
So if you leave your password for too long, they might get leaked.
Okay,
And you're not gonna know it until it's too late.
okay, all right. Anybody,
Risk assessments, maybe.
risk assessment, how so?
Like maybe they have, like their auditing team or like their blue team side does more tests to see like what's vulnerable.
More prep between a red and blue team?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
More user training.
More YouTube training?
User.
Oh, I thought you said YouTube training, it's like,
User
yeah,
training.
probably. More user training, very good. That's probably the most important one, because user errors is definitely, you know, what it is. Anything else?
Firing the staff.
What's that?
Probably not firing the staff.
Probably not firing the staff, you know, it sounds like you're saying that jokingly, but I mean, there's something to be said for that, right? Because if you're gonna train somebody up and then get rid of them, what else? That's good.
Firewalls to protect against HTTP packets.
Okay, so firewalls. I'm willing to bet that Twitter probably has a pretty secure firewall network set up.
So.
You think so? So that's what leads me to believe that the problem is more human and less technical, because they have the money and the resources and the necessity to be pretty strong. But yeah, definitely, if we're talking to another organization saying, hey, have a firewall set up. Now, would you rather them have 2 Palo Alto firewalls or another setup?
Another setup,
Why?
because having the two separate eliminates any single points of failure.
Very good, yep. That's that redundancy, right? A high redundancy means I'm gonna buy a Palo Alto firewall and I'm gonna buy a FortiGate. That way, if somebody figures out how to break a Palo Alto, I've still got the FortiGate that will protect it. Going back to what you were talking about, Dylan, and kind of what you were talking about too, Caleb, I think that one of the downfalls of a lot of organizations, not talking about Twitter, but talking about some smaller organizations, is the fact that, or think about like the Norman Public Schools ransomware that happened 2 years ago now. The problem with that is the IT person that's usually hired by a school is either going to be one IT guy that has to take care of everything, or it's gonna be a volunteer service, kind of like, you know, if you're at a small school and they say, can anybody here coach the basketball team? And some guy says, I'll coach the basketball team, and he's never played basketball in his life, right? So the IT guy is typically spread pretty thin. And so what you're looking at with a lot of these organizations is you have to realize that sometimes it may look on the outside that they should have everything together, but they simply don't because they can't hire the resources, the human resources, to ensure that security is essential, right? So what you're talking about, Dylan, is, all right, more opportunities for the people they do have to understand what's going on with the security, how to protect it, what to look for, how to see those things. And if you do have the opportunity to be in an organization that says, hey, should we hire a red team? Should we hire some people who have security background? The answer should always be yes. All right, very good.
Pay now or pay a bunch later.
What's that?
I said pay now or pay a bunch later.
Pay now or pay a bunch later. You're absolutely right. All right, any questions on that scenario? All right, very good. Good job. Good understanding, good communication. So, all right, that's all we'll tackle with that stuff. You guys can get to work on your individual stuff.